Greetings, fellow artists. My name is David Yehuda. Today I'm going to be painting a tree. It's a very famous tree. It's the Angel Oaks, and it's located in South Carolina. I'm playing the video for this demonstration in 8x speed. I don't expect you to keep up with me and try to paint it at the same time. However, if you want, I can repost this at normal speed without commentary if you want to paint and draw along. What I'm doing right now is I've laid down the ground color, which is gold. The gold is Liquitex's basic gold. It's a very thin color, and I usually don't use it except for painting the ground on a painting. I don't use the Liquitex basics, but I do use regular Liquitex, which is Liquitex heavy bodies, along with golden heavy body all the time. This particular painting is 24 inches by 36 inches. It's a rather large canvas. I usually work in a bit smaller canvases, 28 by 30s or 24 by 30s, and 20 by 16s, sizes like that. However, I thought that this particular painting called for extra space off to the left and off to the right, because the oak tree is so big. And I also put in a figure for reference, so there's going to be an artist drawing the tree in the painting, and that is just for a reference to show the size of the tree. The tree has many branches and has a wide trunk. Even though I'm going to be painting over the initial drawing, I just wanted to make sure that I could get the size and the proportions right. So that's the reason why I'm making this preliminary drawing. Now I'm painting over the drawing, and this is my base coat. It's not the ground coat. The ground coat was gold. I let the gold dry, of course, and now I'm painting blue, ultramarine blue, and phthalo blue mixture, along with titanium white, in order to get the sky, which is the background behind the tree. And the reference photo that I'm using, there was also some bushes behind the tree. I'm not including those in my final painting because they simply draw attention away from the tree. The tree is a historical landmark, and it sits in a site with other trees, and you can go visit them and make portraits of your own, of course. The tree is going to be covering the entire canvas, and the sky is going to have some clouds in it. These are not going to be heavy clouds, but just a light cloud here and there. I'm using foam brushes in order to do this base coat. The foam brushes are relatively inexpensive. They come in a pack of 3, and I get them at Michael's or Blick. With all of my brushes and with all of my foam brushes, I'm also very careful to store them in water until I can wash them, and I wash them off in soap and shake them to dry. I don't dry them with a towel. I know a lot of people do, but I don't. I just let them sit on a paper towel until they're dry or until I use them the next time. Now I am adding the base coat for the ground, the actual ground in the painting, which is what the tree is sitting on. In the reference photo, the tree actually sits on a bit of a mound. I'm not showing that in my photograph. I'm just showing the ground straight, as though it were a straight horizon. The colors that I use are a mixture of red oxide, raw umber, burnt umber, and a little bit of cad red medium. After drying, I reapply the sketch. This time, this will be the final sketch. So I'm being very careful to get the proportions and the details that I'm going to want in my final painting. I'm not actually using chalk for this. I'm using pastel white. Chalk does not draw so well on paint, at least the chalk that I've tried, whereas the pastel whites, if they're soft pastel whites, they show up better. I have used other colors before, including charcoal, black charcoal, and yellow pastel. The yellow pastel works if the background itself is white, but I don't recommend using the charcoal because it left a smudge in the painting that was unintended, and I've tried this several times and have stopped using the charcoal for the sketches. This is an oak tree, and its branches bend and contort in a certain way. I have other paintings that include maple trees, and the branches of the oak tree in the reference photo don't quite bend as much as the maple trees did, or they're not as straight as the willow trees. So when drawing each kind of tree, make sure to get the characteristic of the tree down as best you can. Another favorite tree that I like to draw is the olive trees, and the olive trees are of such a high variety that you can't make any general statements about the olive trees, except I've found that they tend to be a favorite of the people that I do paintings for by consignment. Of the things that I do by consignment, by far the biggest request that I get is to draw and paint trees. So I do as many trees as I can to keep up with this demand. The next step that I'm doing here is painting a base coat of black for the base coat on the tree. I will be using palette knives to paint the trunk of the tree and the larger branches, so this black base coat is not going to be the final front element in this painting. It's actually just a background. After I add the leaves, I will paint the background in again to make sure that it shows up. This tree has a very interesting silhouette, and if you were to do a Halloween drawing, you could use the oak tree as a design. The next thing that I am doing is applying the leaves with a sponge. I'm going to actually do the trunk of the tree after I paint the leaves. This is kind of a random choice. These leaves are not put down in a pattern, but they should be random. Try to avoid patterns as much as you can when painting with a sponge like this. I'm not always so successful in avoiding the patterns. As you can see in one part of the leaves there, it kind of looks like the pattern of a snake or a centipede, that kind of thing. By applying more paint to it, I will randomize the pattern as much as I can. Hello, this is David Yehuda. Welcome to the second part of my video. Now we get to the really fun part, painting the details. The first thing that I'm starting with here is I'm painting the figure reference. My little artist here is painting the tree, and so I want to show how really big the tree is. The tree is actually bigger than what I've showed it to be in relation to this artist. However, I wanted to have some details in the picture, so I went ahead and included it. It's a picture within a picture. The artist is painting a tree. The artist is in profile. I don't know if that shows up on your video or not. The artist is not the center of reference or center of focus of the picture. However, the trunk of the tree is. Always have in mind what your center of focus is going to be. And in this case, it is the tree itself. And I'm highlighting the tree right now with a paint spatula, commonly known as a palette knife. I'm using the palette knife with the following colors: red oxide, burnt sienna, raw sienna, yellow oxide. These are sometimes contrasting colors, but they're all complementary as far as the bark of the tree is concerned. With the broadest of features on the tree bark, I use the palette knife. However, when I get out to the extreme branches, I'm going to be using a regular brush. In this case, I use the Ruby Satin Silver series. I use the angle brush. This is a 1/4 inch brush. I'm using it on the hat of the artist right now and adding a couple of details there. Getting back to this idea of center of focus. The tree is not located centrally in the picture. That doesn't mean that it can't be a center of focus. I avoid trying to center things exactly and perfectly. It's actually a Japanese concept. If you look at a lot of Japanese prints, the center of focus is not necessarily in the center of the picture. Your Impressionist and Post-Impressionist artists knew this and studied this and liked this, and these included Vincent van Gogh, who, if you study some of his paintings, you'll see that he does not necessarily paint the central item in the painting exactly in the center of the painting. The next detail that I am adding here is knot holes. This was an experimental feature for me, these knot holes. I wanted to make sure not to paint too many of them or paint too few of them. The original angel oak has plenty of knot holes on them. The tree itself, I've read two different things about this angel oak's tree. One is that it's 400 years old, and then another one I read that it's 1200 years old. So whenever a branch is cut off, it will form a knot hole. So I'm not sure exactly how old the tree is. Again, I'm using the sponge to add a detail. The colors that I'm adding are bright lime orange and also teal. In the reference photo that I used, there seemed to be a teal color, and so I decided that I wanted to try this out and see how it shows up on my picture. I wanted to make sure that the leaves contrast with the branches so that they show up. I recently completed a picture of a tree where that is not the case, and you can't tell where the branches end and the leaves begin, and it's not a very good picture. I have higher hopes for this painting, in that the branches will be highlighted and that the leaves are just merely there for color. I try to spread these details out as much as possible, but not to make a uniform showing. By uniform showing, I mean that I don't want it to be all the same thing all over the place. I want there to be patches of different elements scattered throughout the picture. Now I'm adding some texture to the ground that the tree is sitting in. That's another important element of a good painting, is to have texture. Even the lack of texture says something about texture. in your modern abstract paintings. Texture is always important, and is an important element as far as the painting is concerned. This is David Yehuda Grossman. Thank you so much for watching this video. Have a wonderful day.